Hey, what is up, you guys? Quentin Loves Trains and Horror Movies 2015, and today we're looking at the seminal horror film Scream, released in 1996 by Freddy Krueger creator Wes Craven, who also directed 3 Scream sequels before he had passed away in 2015. It's hard to overstate the impact Scream had on the horror genre. It reignited slasher flicks, spawning a whole host of late 90s imitators, and set the tone for the genre for the better part of a decade. After Scream, horror would take on a certain feel. It'd be funny, hip, and most importantly self-aware.
What's your favorite scary movie?
With that line in the countless references that follow, Scream told its audience that the characters they were watching were just like them. They knew about Jason, Freddy, and Chucky. They knew the so-called rules of the genre. Then Scream told them that knowledge wouldn't save these characters. They were gonna die anyway. And how many were going to die? Let's get to reviewing this movie. High school student Casey Becker receives a flirtatious phone call from an unknown person asking her, "What's your favorite scary movie?" However, the caller turns sadistic and threatens her life. He reveals that her boyfriend, Steve Orth, is being held hostage and demands she answers questions about horror films. After Casey gets one wrong, Steve is murdered. When Casey refuses to answer more questions, she is murdered by a masked killer. Her parents come home to find her corpse hanging from a tree. The following day, the news media descend on the town and a police investigation begins. Meanwhile, Sidney Prescott struggles with the impending first anniversary of her mother's murders by Cotton Wary. While waiting at home for her friend Tatum Riley, Sidney receives a threatening phone call. After she hangs up, she is attacked by the killer, but manages to escape. Sidney's boyfriend, Billy Loomis, arrives shortly after, but after he drops his cell phone, Sidney suspects him of making the call and flees. Billy is arrested, and Sidney spends the night at Tatum's house. Billy is released the next day. Suspicion has shifted to Sidney's father, Neil Prescott, as the calls have been traced to his phone. School is suspended in the wake of the murders. After the students have left the school, Principal Himbry is stabbed to death in his office. Tatum's boyfriend, Stu Macher, throws a party to celebrate the school's closure. The party is attended by Sidney, Tatum, their friend Randy Meeks, and multiple other students. Reporter Gail Weathers attends uninvited to cover the situation as she expects the killer to strike. Tatum's brother, Deputy Sheriff Dewey Riley, also looks out for the murderer at the party. Tatum is killed during the party after having her head crushed by the garage door. Billy arrives to speak to Sidney privately, and the two ultimately consummate their relationship. Dewey and Gale investigate a nearby abandoned car. Many party attendees are drawn away after hearing news of Himbry's death. Sidney, Billy, Randy, Stu, and Gale's cameraman Kenny remain. After having sex, Sidney and Billy are attacked by the killer, who seemingly murders Billy. Sidney narrowly escapes the house and seeks help from Kenny, but the killer slices Kenny his throat. Sidney then flees again. Gale and Dewey, having discovered that the car belongs to Neil Prescott, return to the house. They believe Neil is the killer and has come to the party to continue his spree. Gale tries to escape in her van, but drives off the road and crashes to avoid hitting Sidney. Meanwhile, Dewey is stabbed in the back while investigating in the house, and Sidney takes his gun. Stu and Randy appear to accuse each other of being the killer. Sidney retreats into the house where she finds Billy wounded but still alive. She gives Billy the gun. He lets Randy into the house and shoots him. Billy reveals that he feigned his injuries and is actually the killer. Stu is his accomplice. Billy and Stu discuss their plan to kill Sidney and frame the murder spree on her father, whom they have taken hostage. The pair also reveal that they, not Cotton, murdered her mother, Maureen, as she was having an affair with Billy's father, which drove his mother away. Gale, who survived the crash, intervenes, and Sidney takes advantage of this to turn the tables on her attackers, killing Stu. Randy is revealed to be wounded but alive. Billy attacks Sidney but shoots him through the head, killing him. As the sun rises and police arrive, a badly injured Dewey is taken away by ambulance, and Gale makes an impromptu news report about the night's events. That's it. Released in 1996, Scream is probably one of the most important horror movies ever made. And I would also like to give a shout out to Christian Hannah Horror, Nick the Lost River Drive-In, Lee Drum Dums, Justin Ryan 1988, Pizzal, Nick Push's Horror Channel, Jake Blaster Productions, Braden Timmons, Bud from the Halloweenverse, Zach Cece's World, Mike and Jay from We Watched a Movie, Jimmy Champagne, and James A. Janice from Dead Meat. Next week, I'll be reviewing Scream 2. Until next time, I'm Quentin Loves Trains and Horror Movies 2015. Please like, share, subscribe, comment below on what you think. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and support me on Patreon. Thanks, be good people.